I was 8, maybe 9, kneeling on a plastic stool in my grandmother's kitchen, sunlight pouring through lace curtains and slicing the table into bright diamonds of dust. She was teaching me how to fold dumplings, her thumbs pressing perfect half-moons into dough, when she suddenly caught my wrist, turned my small left-hand palm up, and gasped, not in alarm, but in recognition. The room stilled. Her fingertip traced the pale, curved sliver just below my index finger, then the neat, angular M that the heart, head, and lifelines had somehow conspired to form. "Ah," she whispered in dialect, "the moon and the letter. You'll carry water for many, but fire for yourself. Remember that." Then she let go, laughed, and the moment evaporated like steam above the pot. I did not understand, but something in my chest, something deeper than bone, registered the message and quietly folded it away for later. Chapter 1. The Marking. The crescent moon is not ink or scar. It is a soft, luminous indentation, a scoop of skin no wider than a grain of rice. The M is sturdier, 3 bold ridges, meeting at angles sharp enough to catch stray light. Together they sit like a sigil on the Mount of Luna, the region of the palm that palmists once claimed governs dreams, tides, and hidden sight. In the folklore of Rajasthan, they say only 1 in 10,000 hands bears both signs. In Egypt, temple scribes painted the same pairing on the inner walls of Hathor's shrine as a shorthand for one who listens to the unseen. In rural Japan, grandmothers still tell children that a moon and M child is born with an extra ear inside the heart. Chapter 2. Early Static. Adolescence arrived with its usual storms, geometry tests, first heartbreak, the dizzy scent of pine after rain. But beneath the ordinary turbulence ran a second, subtler frequency. I would walk into a classroom and know without looking who had cried that morning. I would dream of my great-aunt's funeral 3 days before the telegram arrived. The crescent moon warmed like a coin under hot water whenever something invisible shifted. Once during a family dinner, I pressed my palm to the table and felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to call my mother's cousin in another city. She answered on the 3rd ring, mid-panic. Her kitchen pipe had burst, and she was ankle-deep in water. The adults laughed it off as coincidence. I laughed too, but the moon throbbed like a second pulse, and I began to suspect coincidence was only a polite word for something older and more deliberate. Chapter 3. The Weight of Other People's Sips Noise. At 21, I moved to the city, where every street corner poured out its own cocktail of longing, rage, and desire. My sensitivity, once a private, almost secret companion, became deafening. On crowded buses, I would feel the thrum of strangers' unspoken sorrows pressing against my ribs. I learned to cross my arms, palms tucked inward, as though shielding a candle flame. Still, the M ached after long days, like a muscle used too hard. A bartender friend noticed the marks one night and told me about empaths, people whose nervous systems mistake someone else's storm for their own. I nodded, but the word felt clinical, too small. The moon on my palm was not a diagnosis, it was a vow. Chapter 4. The Collapse of the False Scaffold. At 32, I lost my job, my lease, and within the same month, my mother. The world, which had always seemed securely nailed together, suddenly revealed itself as a tent in high wind. Grief shredded the usual distractions. There were entire nights when I sat in the dark, palm pressed to heart, feeling the crescent moon burn cold and the M throb hot, as though they were arguing about direction. One pre-dawn hour, exhausted beyond pride, I whispered to the ceiling, "Tell me what you want." The answer arrived, not as words but as an image, an empty bowl, filling drop by drop with moonlight. I understood finally that the task was not to stopper the bowl, but to keep it open. Chapter 5. Learning to listen in the language of silence. I began with 5 minutes a day of deliberate stillness, no chanting, no apps, just the sound of my own breathing and the steady company of the markings. I noticed that when I inhaled, the MA widened slightly, the lines relaxing. When fear spiked, the crescent narrowed to a sliver. Over months, the hand became a barometer, teaching me to distinguish between instinct, clear, cool, and anxiety, jagged, hot. I kept a small notebook, dreams, coincidences, the sudden urge to text a friend who, without fail, was in crisis. Patterns emerged like constellations. The moon brightened before major shifts. The MA twitched. When I was about to ignore my own knowing, I started calling them the twins. They giggled in the language of skin. Chapter 6. Boundaries as Spiritual Hygiene. A healer I met in Oaxaca taught me a simple ritual. At sunset, I would trace the outline of the crescent with my right index finger, then draw an imaginary circle around my body. Your field, she said, is a garden. You decide who walks among the roses. The first time I performed the gesture in a crowded marketplace, the effect was immediate. The usual tidal pull of strangers' emotions receded, leaving me buoyant and astonishingly lonely. Loneliness, I learned, is the price of clarity, but it is also the space where self meets self. I began to crave solitude the way a diver craves decompression. The twins approved. The moon cooled. The MS settled into a steady listening line. Chapter 7. The first event. Global shift in energy. In 2020, the world convulsed. Overnight, screens filled with sirens and statistics. I watched from my apartment window as masked strangers hurried past, like extras in someone else's dystopia. And then something odd happened. The moon on my palm began to glow, not visibly, but sensorially, like the memory of phosphorescence on a childhood beach. Dreams became crowded, thousands of voices, not mine, asking for direction. I would wake drenched in a sorrow I could not name, palms tingling. One dawn I drew the circle, traced the crescent, and asked, "How do I help without drowning?" The answer was a single word: relay. Be the stone that throws the ripple, not the lake that absorbs the storm. Chapter 8. The second through fourth events. Rise, collapse, and inner call. The next 3 years unfolded in archetypal rhythm, a surge of collective spiritual hunger. Second event brought strangers to my inbox, all bearing the same 2 signs on their hands, all asking, "Did you know?" A financial crash. Third event stripped away the last props of security. I sold furniture, moved into a single room, and discovered that emptiness can be spacious. Finally, a health scare. Fourth event forced a confrontation with mortality. On the ultrasound table, I opened my palm. The crescent moon looked suddenly fragile, like a fingernail paring. The M stood stark and unafraid. A nurse glanced at it, smiled, and said, "That's a good mark. My grandma used to say it means you'll live long enough to finish what you started." I laughed, then cried, then decided she was right. Chapter 9. The fifth through seventh events. Consciousness, conflict, light leaders. The world did not end. It quickened. I began teaching small circles, first in living rooms, then online, always beginning with the same invitation: open your hand and read what you have been carrying. The fifth event was a planetary rise in awareness so gentle it could be mistaken for coincidence. People waking at 3:33, hummingbirds tapping windows, songs arriving on repeat with surgical precision. The sixth event was the inevitable backlash, fear masquerading as skepticism, ridicule, the old guard defending the crumbling fortress of rationality. The seventh event birthed light leaders, ordinary-looking folk whose palms bore the same sigil, whose eyes held the same quiet knowing. We did not gather to be special, we gathered to be useful. Chapter 10. The Arrival of the Crescent Path. Now, at 53, the markings have softened with age, but their message has sharpened. The moon has widened into a cradle, the M has relaxed into a bridge. I no longer ask what they mean, I ask how they can serve. Yesterday, a teenager on the bus noticed my palm and shyly showed me her own, identical twin sigils, fresh as new snow. Her voice shook as she described dreams of tsunamis and rescue boats. I told her what I wish someone had told me at 15. You are not too sensitive, you are a tuning fork. The world is simply playing a song. It forgot it knew. Epilogue, the whisper beneath the skin. Tonight, I sit again in the old armchair, chamomile cooling, silence thick as honey. The house is quieter than it has ever been, yet it feels inhabited, not by ghosts, but by possibilities. I open my hand under the lamplight. The moon gleams like a tiny boat. The M stands like a doorway. Between them pulses a single truth. Destiny is not a destination, it is a conversation, and the conversation is just beginning.